Hello, and welcome to the Rankin Report for Sunday, May 21st, 2023. From the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15, verses 27 through 29. As Samuel turned to leave, Saul caught hold of the hem of his robe, and it tore. Samuel said to him, "The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and has given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. He who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not a human being that he should change his mind." Saul was appointed by the prophet Samuel to be Israel's first king, and yet he lost the job. Saul was still anointed, but Saul set what the crowd desired above what God desired. Saul was a rather insecure fellow, and he set the crowd's desire and what was directly before him, what he could see, above what he could not see, to the point where Saul fudged on the Lord's instructions, and God finally had enough of Saul. The founders took this and other scriptures as a lesson that if a king ruled against God's commandments and principles, then that king had lost his legitimacy to rule. It was a motivation for the colonies to petition heaven for redress, and finally for God's favor on the American Revolution. For specifics as to the grievances against King George III, read the Declaration of Independence. But the colonies worked within the law, or within the system, if you will, as far as they could. The trouble with Great Britain took about a dozen years before it blossomed into independence for the United States. These principles work in modern times as well. There is a treaty being negotiated right now with the World Health Organization, a branch of the United Nations, scheduled to be completed by the end of this month. The treaty would set up guidelines with the nations that sign on to it for how to respond to the next epidemic or pandemic. Many of these involve submitting to the WHO's guidelines on how to respond, and some fear, who are suspicious of the WHO's intentions after the COVID-19 mess, elements of which we are still dealing with, fearing that by signing on to the treaty, the United States would be turning over our national sovereignty to a global body that is not elected by the people. I do not know whether the treaty is good or bad. However, when people who I have come to respect issue warnings like this, and the national media, whose information I have come to take with a very large grain of salt, say their fears are a, quote, nothing burger, unquote, I tend to pay attention. I am also suspicious of the possible actions of the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., who I still take great care not to refer to as the President of the United States. Under the Constitution, treaties are negotiated by the executive branch, the President or his administration, but can only be ratified by the United States Senate before they can take effect. The reason for that is that senators are elected officials. Originally, they were appointed by state legislatures, but then a constitutional amendment changed that to direct election by the people. Either way, in one form or another, senators are answerable to the people. Now, of course, the loyalty of some elected officials to the people is somewhat suspect these days, as more of them are beholden to special interests. But the people still have the final say in that the senators can be voted out. So the people's recourse is to petition, and if that fails, vote. This, however, can be circumvented by the use of executive power in the form of orders from the chief executive to impose the treaty's conditions on the American people, either directly or indirectly through government agencies. If the president or the person occupying that office decides to use extra legal routes to impose a treaty on the people that the people had no say in, and either interferes with, diminishes, or nullifies their rights as United States citizens, such an action can be defined as treason against the United States. It is the very no taxation without representation cry that the colonists raised. Taxes were imposed upon them by the Parliament in Britain, and this people had no representatives there. Such an action can be defined as treasonous, or at the very least, the work of a tyrant. Any senator who either supports or gives assent to that extra legal route could be considered complicit in such treason. And while anyone elected to the House of Representatives who does not act by preparing articles of impeachment against that person occupying the office of the presidency may not be doing anything necessarily illegal or unconstitutional, their silence still gives assent to the action as well. Now, if YouTube hasn't thrown me off yet, there are 3 things people need to do, and quickly. First, or there are 4 things actually, excuse me. First, pray. Cry out to God, not as a last resort, but by making the appeal to heaven that the founders did against the tyranny of George III. It may be that God will not only hear, but might give ideas and strategy as to how to proceed for those seeking his face. He can also turn the hearts of those who might originally support such actions and turn them against the wicked. Number 2, contact your officials. Alert your senators to keep watch that the executive branch does not try to usurp the Senate's constitutional role regarding treaties. If such action takes place, alert your congressman or congresswoman that the executive is acting outside the bounds of the Constitution and take appropriate action. And if the officials in your state support such a move, contact their colleagues in other states, asking them to step up for you where your own elected officials have failed. 3, alert others. Write to letters to newspapers, other publications, write on blogs, make videos like this one, for instance, and make your voice heard. There are plenty of websites, there are plenty of platforms out there that will not take you off for holding conservative views. Find them, plug them in there. 4, learn the Constitution. If you've never had a civics class in school, get a copy of the Constitution or take an online course to learn how it works. There are plenty of places that give out copies of the Constitution for free. My own school, I saw a number of students being handed a copy of the document in a small book form. Learn what the branches of government are charged with doing and recognize when they have stepped outside of those boundaries. God gave political power to the people of this nation. In this system, the people have the final say. And if this earthly power is properly exercised, and the rest is left to the Lord, God will uninstall the wicked for America, just as he did for ancient Israel. The civil war in the spiritual realm is being fought now, right now, and we have a role to play. And if we do our part, God may permit things to not spill over into the physical world and a bloody earthly conflict. Pray for the Great Awakening. No king but Jesus. Independence forever. That's the Rankin Report for Sunday, May 21st, 2023. God bless you. Have a great day.